Well, hey, everybody. Good morning. Pastor Steve here. Happy Thanksgiving. Beautiful day to be thankful for all God's blessings. I hope you enjoy time with your loved ones and whatever the meal is you're fixing. We do the traditional thing with turkey and stuffing and sweet potato casserole and other stuff. And, I got to have my pumpkin pie, and I like to stuff the bird. I just am convinced that stuffing in the bird is 10 times better than dressing not stuffed in the bird. But that's just me. Anyway, glad you joined me today for our devotion. We are in 2 Corinthians chapter 8. Paul is talking about the offering he is collecting from the Gentile churches in Greece and Macedonia and so on for the church in Jerusalem that was struggling with some famine and poverty and other issues. And he begins in chapter 8 by saying to the Corinthians that their brethren to the north of them up in Thessalonica, which was in Macedonia, have been very generous. And so let's look at that starting at verse 1. He says, "Now, brethren, we wish to make known to you the grace of God which has been given in the churches of Macedonia." So all the churches up there in Macedonia, Thessalonica, Berea, Philippi, so on. He said they have been very generous. In verse 2, that in a great ordeal of affliction, while they were being persecuted, a great deal of affliction, their abundance of joy and their deep poverty. They were not wealthy Christians. They were not wealthy churches. Overflowed in the wealth of their liberality. Even though they didn't have much, they were so generous in their giving to this offering for the church that was in Jerusalem. Verse 3, "For I testify that according to their ability and beyond their ability, they gave of their own accord." Nobody made them. They just voluntarily did this, and they gave not only in keeping with what they could do or could give, they went beyond what you would normally think they could give or they could do. They were very generous. Verse 4, even begging us with much urging for the favor of participation in the support of the saints. I mean, I can imagine Paul was thinking they're suffering so much and they're poor. I don't want to ask them to give, but they begged him to let them participate in this. Do you understand that sometimes when we say, "Oh, we don't expect anybody to give," we're actually doing people a disservice. People who have a heart for being part of what God is doing, why would you rob them of that? So they were very generous. And in verse 5, he says, "And this, not as we had expected, but they first gave themselves to the Lord and to us by the will of God." I mean, before they gave any money, they had dedicated themselves to God and they loved Paul. He said they had everything in the right order and they were giving out of their love, not only for Paul and his ministry and the saints in Jerusalem, but out of their love for God. So very generous. And Paul is using their example to encourage the Thessalonians to give to this offering, the Corinthians rather, to give to this offering as well. The Corinthians had previously made a commitment to do so. Paul was on his way to Corinth, and he's telling them to be ready, get the offering ready so they won't have to collect it once he's there. They've already collected it. And he's hoping that the example of all the believers up in Macedonia spurs them on to great faithfulness as well. So in verse 7, "Just as you abound in everything, in faith and utterance and knowledge and all earnestness, and in the love we inspired in you." You do so many things well, he says to the Corinthians. "See that you abound in this gracious work also." See that you abound in this gracious work of giving to the offering for the church and the believers, the saints in Jerusalem. Drop down to verse 11. "But now, finish doing it also." You made the commitment. Now, follow through. Finish it, okay? Don't make the commitment and then back out. Follow through. But now, finish doing it also, so that just as there was the readiness to desire it, in the beginning you got excited, wanted to do it, just as you had that, so there may also be the completion of it by your ability. Follow through. "For if the readiness is present, it is acceptable according to what a person has, not according to what he does not have." God doesn't expect you to give what you don't have. So he's encouraging them to be generous. And what's interesting is you have these young Gentile churches, and by young, I mean they weren't that old. These churches in Macedonia and Corinth had been started on Paul's second missionary journey. And as he's wrapping up his third missionary journey, revisiting these places on his way to Jerusalem, he's collecting this offering. So these are relatively new, young churches, some being in areas where they were persecuted, some poverty, not great rich churches, and yet they are giving to another church. They're giving to the mother church, so to speak. They're giving to a bigger church because the church in Jerusalem had thousands. So these smaller, newer Gentile churches were generously giving to help the saints of a larger church in Jerusalem. Churches helping churches. Saints helping saints. We've been blessed to help other churches. We send funds to help with church planting and the training of new church pastors, new church planters out in Los Angeles. When the fires devastated parts of Los Angeles, we sent some funds to a particular new Baptist church there that was ministering to people in their community. And you know, I even heard of one person who was complaining, why did we do that? Why to send money locally or over to North Carolina that was devastated? Well, we did send money to North Carolina when that devastating flooding took place. In fact, we sent more to northwestern North Carolina than we sent to Los Angeles. But why would we not help our brothers and sisters in Los Angeles? Not everybody out in Los Angeles is rich or is a Hollywood star. We provide funds to help new church starts, new church plants in the Grand Strand and North Myrtle Beach and in Charleston. We've given generously to churches in Rock Hill and York County that needed help at times. Helping a church in Kings Mountain, not far from, not Kings Mountain, but in Blacksburg, not far from here. We've helped with churches in other countries, whether it's England, Zambia, other places. Why would we not do that? You go back in our church's history, back in the 1800s when First Baptist Church Rock Hill was started, the South Carolina Baptist Convention, Catawba Baptist Church, and Harmony Baptist Church. Those three together are the reason First Baptist Church Rock Hill got started. Churches help start other churches, and churches financially help other churches. And not just in their backyard. And to not do that is short-sighted, unbiblical, selfish, and sinful. We should be thankful for the blessings of God this Thanksgiving. And one of the ways we express that gratitude is by helping others, including helping other churches. Can we help every church? No. But we can choose to help some, and we will continue to do it. God bless you. Happy Thanksgiving. I'll see you tomorrow. And remember, Sunday, one service, 10 o'clock. Have a great Thanksgiving day.